So I want to welcome everybody this morning to our first Winning at Wellness webinar presented today by the Promote and Protect Nutrition and Food Access domain. So you'll be hearing lots of great information today. As you're joining us, please feel free to add your name to the chat, your name and your organization, so we can capture who's here today. And then in addition to that, throughout the presentation, we always welcome and encourage conversation in the chat. So we'll be monitoring that to answer questions. We will have some Q&A periods throughout the presentation. We'll stop and have some time to discuss the information that's being presented as well. Okay, so as we all know, the purpose of our collaborative is to bring together partners who are committed to school wellness, to share resources and to collaborate to inspire communities to take their wellness policies from paper to practice, as written in our vision statement. We are a working group and we develop partnerships to support school districts to catalyze and collaborate to strengthen skills and commitment and to share resources and increase communications. So for today's presentation, as I mentioned, this is presented today by our domain, the Access to Nutrition and Food Security. And so we're going to answer some questions for you today. And the questions that we're going to answer is, what is the Local School Wellness Policy Collaborative? I believe I already covered that information. We are going to talk about how schools can act as nutrition hubs for their communities. We are going to discuss resources and funding that are available to help schools adopt these practices. And we're going to talk about how we can best support you and how you could get involved. Okay, so I already mentioned that the foundation of our collaborative, and I also wanted to mention that we do have three domains, three groups this year. The first one is to support the whole community, and whole child group. The second is the improve implementation and evaluation of local school wellness policy group. And the third is the promote and protect access to nutrition and security. So these working groups all have individual action plans, but really we're all coming together to establish a culture of wellness and to identify how we can support schools and school districts in implementing their wellness plans throughout the state, and also share resources with each other. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Nick, who is one of the co-chairs of our domain, and he is going to cover the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you to all of the California Local School Wellness Policy Collaborative. I know it's been a lot of planning and strategic planning and conversations and coordinating schedules. So thank you to everyone for making the time to be here. And thank you to anyone joining us today or who's watching the recording. If you go back, sorry, the first slide that I'm going to go over is just about our domain or our working group, which is Promote and Protect Access to Nutrition and Food Security. Normally, I am not going to read the slides, but I am going to read this one because this is an important statement for us and our team. And I think if you're somebody who's interested in getting involved or learning more, that this will really resonate with you. So our work group supports and promotes school districts' evolving role as school nutrition hubs. We help identify areas of access for nutrition, promoting community eligibility provision and universal access, and adapting best practices to meet evolving public health scenarios, including pandemics, racial justice, and other identified student needs. It's really crazy how much schools have to do and all of the different roles that they play in our communities. And this lens of our working group is really thinking about how we can serve the whole community and how we can adapt. We've seen it more than ever during COVID, which you can go to the next slide, Jerry, which is about this. But the impacts of COVID-19 have really shown the different ways that our schools have had to respond to a shifting food system and a shifting social structure, I think, too, as there's been demonstrations for racial justice and equal opportunity and equity. So there's a couple things that we're going to cover in this slide. The first one is that COVID-19 exposed fractures in the food system. When restaurants shut down and when a lot of institutional food service locations shut down, we saw increased need at food banks and at schools in order to feed our communities. And this was a big shift in recognizing that I don't know, I guess from our level at the Department of Food and Ag, we just saw the huge increases in the amount of food that needed to get shifted to different access points so that we wouldn't allow it to go to waste. Similarly, we saw that there was difficulty sometimes at the grocery store finding what you needed as all of our products shifted from being stored in grocery store shelves to being stored in our pantries. And so, as the food chain has caught up to these shifting things, we've still seen that the food banks and schools are the necessary access points for our communities. Uh, and that's the second bullet, too. The third bullet is that shifting USDA guidelines and school nutrition practices have been evolving throughout this whole process. I can't remember the exact number of waivers that the USDA announced. Maybe someone from CDE can put that in the chat. But I know it's a giant amount of adaptation and evolution that schools have had to go through in order to continue serving meals in a safe way for the community. And also, I know for farmers on the food access side that they also had to navigate a bunch of challenging relief programs in order to make sure that they could still sell their product to schools and to other access points. The last bullet point here is that schools had to fully step in and expand their role as nutrition hubs for their community. So we're going to look at some of the different practices that schools used in order to feed their children that they're responsible for and support, as well as their families. And Jackie Richardson in the chat just said she thinks we're up to 70 waivers, which it's been a long time now, but that's still a lot. Okay, next slide, please. So what does a school nutrition hub look like? So these are elements that our domain have developed in order to help define a school nutrition hub. If you have other practices that you think should be included or should be explored, we'd love to see those in the chat. So these are the four that we really wanted to highlight, which is schools utilizing breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper meal distributions. Of course, during different times, they're able to leverage different programs, but we're really hoping that schools will embrace all of these programs. Of course, there's challenges, but there's always ways to overcome. The second tactic that we're hoping to see is the incorporation of school pantries and partnerships with local food banks and other food access partners. So how can we ensure that the families uh, of our school communities are getting fed as well? The third bullet is helping families enroll in these other government programs like CalFresh, WIC, Pandemic EBT. And then, of course, during COVID specifically, how do we utilize these additional relief resources, which we have some great examples to share coming up. And then the last bullet is ensuring food access and equity for our communities. So looking at equity as a lens for our work and ensuring that we are connected to that mission, whether we're school nutrition providers, state agencies stepping in to support, or nonprofit partners stepping into the food system and the school food system specifically. Okay, so if you have other tactics that you'd like to see, please put them in the chat and we can continue to explore and update this PowerPoint. All right, next slide. So right now I'm going to go through each of these different bullets or each of the different techniques, strategies, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Strategies, yeah, each of the different strategies and give some examples of successful schools that have been utilizing them. So breakfast, lunch, and supper, schools leverage all of the available programs. They utilize innovative drive-through strategies, innovative distribution strategies. It is incredible. Each school is a snowflake. Each school has its own needs, its own infrastructure, and the different ways that schools evolve to meet these needs is really inspirational and aspirational. And I hope that if you have questions or if you have other examples, again, that you'll share them with us. Okay, next slide. So this is one example of the different ways that schools have evolved during COVID-19 in order to act as a school nutrition hub. So this is Napa Valley Unified School District, and they've branded as NOSH, which is a great term about really enjoying and loving your food. It's the Napa Operation for School Food and Health. That's what it stands for. And they have utilized all these different distribution methods in order to make sure that their school communities are accessing nutrition. So the first picture there on the left is one of their new distribution hubs for on campus. It's just a mobile meal cart, and they have the meals all bagged up and ready to go. So this is for schools that are meeting in person already. So they've had to develop this way you can see that the staff member has PPE, that she's following all the guidelines there. and has signs up on keeping the distance in line, and has the food prepackaged, ready to go and sealed, so there could be no issues. So that's a really like so here's what they were doing before to show how incredible it is that they've set up all these systems. So the curbside pickup that they have going is still happening at school sites that aren't meeting in person. So every Monday, families can show up for grab and go drive-through meals, get 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches. So a family will come up, um, show evidence of these are the students that I have uh, that we're getting meals for, and then they'll get that number of meals. So imagine if you have 2 kids at that district, you might walk out of there with 6 meals in one go. So it's a really effective strategy to leverage people's time and be really effective with that. On Thursdays, they then give out 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. And then there's more information online. So in addition to developing all of these different strategies for in-person, setting up their new mobile carts, they're also evolving using their web presence and setting up these different practices for their mobile distributions. Then the third piece is for schools where they're eating in classroom, where they've had to, get the wagon brigade out. I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I'm very familiar with this strategy. But you get the wagon out, you fill it up for the students, and then you make sure that these are getting to the right classrooms. So you can see that one district has had to evolve 3 different practices, and I'm sure that these are in iteration 5, 6, and 7 in order to make sure that they're working effectively and getting feedback all the way. So these are really effective ways to make sure that your school community is getting breakfast, lunch, and then supper in some cases too. So the next slide has another example, and this example is from Palm Springs Unified, and Stephanie Bruce is the school nutrition director there. And I hope these pictures have been shared widely and that you've seen them before. But in Palm Springs Unified, they utilize their school buses and transportation department in order to do home delivery of meals. And after Stephanie piloted this in Palm Springs, I know that other school districts have picked it up as well. But they were able to organize all of their transportation teams and their school nutrition team together. You could see how they've had to prep all of these meals and grab and go bags in order to go out. Some schools are doing this widely for their whole school community, which is, I know, what Palm Springs was doing at the start, and others are utilizing this strategy for just a segment of their school community population. So they might be using it for their most at-risk students or students that have disabilities and are not able to access the pickup, then those meals might be getting dropped off. But you can imagine all of the different ways that these schools are having to problem solve and get creative. There's so much inspiration out there. So if you have any of those examples, any of those best practices, any school districts that you think we should talk to and kind of I'm in the Department of Food and Ag, so some of these best practices we can harvest and gather together to share. That would be really helpful and hopeful. So please reach out to us in the chat or over email if you're able to. All right, next slide, please. So we talked about utilizing the different school meals programs creatively, including even updating your infrastructure to do that with mobile carts. The next technique that we're looking at, strategy that we're looking at, is school food pantries and partnerships with local food access organizations. So all the USDA meals programs through schools, which is National School Lunch Program, and then our CACFP program, that's for age 18 and under. And so how do we make sure that the families also get resources? We have to layer again resources from other sites and from other programs. One way to do that, of course, is by partnering with your local food bank or food pantry to set up an additional distribution. So if you're just pulling through one tent to get all of your school meals for your kids, then you might pull through a second tent at that same school distribution in order to get food from the local food bank. We've seen that really effectively. There was actually a great EdSource article written about all the collaboration happening between those partners. So one specific example I want to share is Winters Joint Unified, and 5 other local school districts partner with the Yolo County Food Bank to host kids farmers markets. During this time, the kids aren't running these food distributions, but during normal school times, Yolo County Food Bank is hosting weekly farmers markets at these school sites where they have local fresh produce set up, and then at the end of the school day, instead of the whole, the bell ringing and you see that rush of kids going out to the parking lot to find their parents, instead of doing that, the classes are dismissed one at a time, and then they go and line up at this impromptu farmers market that's set up with local fresh products. And then the kids get to go through and collect those things with their families. It's a really awesome sight to see. I've been at the Winters one 2 different times. One time with the first partner of California, we came to showcase that as a best practice. So it's a really exciting thing, and they're doing 5 different school districts partnering there. So it's great. The other thing that I want to really shout out about this practice with the Yolo County Food Bank is that families celebrate this food without shame, guilt, or any it's just not weird at all. It's like everybody is so excited to see this food. It's so colorful and beautiful, and everybody gets to participate. And that's why it's so effective. And these are small school districts, right? They're rural out there in Yolo County, but it still is important, and we can see models at different places as well. Okay, and then the next slide, I'm going to toss to Heather Reed, who's familiar with these other school food pantry models. Okay, Heather, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Nick. And yeah, it's really good to hear about Yola County. I'm a resident of Yola County, and before COVID, I was volunteering in Washington Unified through West Sacramento at the Kids Farmers Market. And it was really great. The kids helped out, the parents were there. So I'm not sure, how it's been working so well in COVID, but I know people have been adapting quite well. I just wanted to share that these are 3 different models at school food pantries who have stepped up to partner in the because they are a hub. And one is on site where the school food pantry operates out of the school. And we've seen a number of these examples. And before COVID, a lot of them were creating sort of a shopping experience. But now most of them, I believe, are probably pre-assembled. The mobile one where there's a setup, I went to one through Orangevale, and they had it set up at the school, and people were giving out food as volunteers to the families. And so, before COVID, when I was working at California Department of Ed, we did a survey, and we found out at that time about 1 out of 5 schools were operating a school food pantry, and about half of them were doing it kind of this pre-assembled backpack program. Recently, though, I just looked on the internet and I saw that Cal Recycle had funded 6 school food pantries in San Diego through the White Pony Express nonprofit. So I know these efforts are still continuing, and I certainly hope that once the pandemic is over, that we can go back to more of the shopping experience for families, because they were using behavioral economics and smarter lunchroom strategies to really make it an inclusive experience where people felt more like it was a shopping experience rather than a handout. And so, but I think these fill a great need, and I'm so glad that schools have been able to continue it. I think at that point, I'm handing it off again.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And I wanted to share something in the chat. Dr. Robert Lewis from Santa Clarita he shared that we're still serving daily at all 38 schools in Santa Clarita, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily, breakfast, lunch, and some suppers and snacks, also providing weekend meals and holiday meals. So if that's not a great example of and definition of schools acting as a nutrition hub, I don't know what else we can do there, but it's really incredible to see. And we know districts across the state are doing that work. And I'll definitely come back to that, what you shared, Heather, about White Pony Express too, as we get into these other relief programs that are getting utilized. So thank you for sharing. All right, next slide. Okay, so CalFresh, WIC, EBT, and other emergency relief sources. So a number of school districts have partnered with their local county offices in order to make sure that their families are leveraging all the available programs that they can through their free school meals application. So that's one best practice we'd like to share. The examples that we have are really about what's happening during COVID and schools utilizing these additional resources like pandemic EBT and the USDA Farm to Families food boxes in order to provide additional meals for their school community. And what I want to share too is, like Robert did in the chat, if you're able to share what your district is doing, give us a quick update, whether it's an email or a chat, please send it to us. And if you're a local food bank watching this, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear more about what you're doing. Okay, so Jerry, you can go to the next slide, please. So as schools have been evolving, I guess, during this time. We talked about the different iterations on mobile meal sites and all of that. One program that a number of school districts across the state have been able to participate in is the USDA Farm to Families food boxes. And why we're highlighting Riverside Unified is that while a lot of districts are leveraging USDA Farm to Families food boxes through their distributors, Riverside Unified School District is the only school district in the nation that applied for the USDA program as the hub for the farmers to do the purchasing and distribution, because Riverside Unified operates their own school food hub where they work with local farmers to act as like a packing house and distributor for their work. So it's a really incredible program, and that's Scott Burnt on the side, and he runs it. He's a total inspiration if you know Scott. And Riverside has been utilizing these food boxes in order to provide additional local fresh produce to their school families. And I believe the fourth and final round of funding just went out on the Farm to Families program. So you can go to the USDA website, and maybe we can share this in an additional email, but you can pull up the list of California distributors that have that funding. And those distributors are working with local growers and local farmers to buy produce that would normally go to a restaurant or normally go to a college campus that now doesn't have any kids on it. And then that food is getting redirected to additional access points. So if you're a school district that's been utilizing Farmers to Families food boxes from the USDA, we'd love to hear about that. And we just love highlighting Scott and Riverside Unified and what they're doing there. Is there anything, Allison, that you want to add about Scott? I can see your face over on this other side screen, so you can go yes or no. But is there anything we're
No,
missing?
I think you covered it, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and this is just such a really great program. There's been so many success stories of schools utilizing these boxes. So please share them with us. We're going to try to get info from the USDA about who's using them and talk to our vendors. But I don't know. We'll see, because we'd love that data point to see how the resilient food system has been built through that relief effort. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is our last strategy that we've talked about, which is how are food access and equity connected. We've talked about that being a lens, the equity lens being really important to us and looking at our work through that. So if we increase food security, if we increase participation, what does that mean? It means we're increasing opportunity for all communities to attain their highest levels of health. We know that school meals are serving our high need communities a lot of the time, and especially the CEP community eligibility provisions, school sites, and with the waivers now having universally free meals, right? They are able to serve a population that we really, and a community that we really want to make sure that we're giving them the resources they need to access these meals and to improve health for themselves. So why are we focused on this? Because schools have the relationships already in place. They know these families. They know their names. They know the parents. They know the grandparents. They've seen them at the school recitals. They see them in the pickup line in pajamas, and they see them after school when everyone's rushing to, get to dinner or do whatever they need to do. It's really inspirational, the relationships that there are already built on the ground. And we want to make sure that our school nutrition teams and our school wellness teams, which often are taking on extra roles and doing as much as they can, that they're getting this same highlight and this same respect and the same recognition for the important work that they're doing contributing to equity. We also know that that kids who are accessing school meals are more engaged and more ready to participate in the classroom too. So in that way, we're helping with food access, food equity. We're helping close the achievement gap by providing kids the nutrition they need to learn. So this is just such an important piece of our work. If you feel like it's part of your mission or your work on the ground to connect food access and equity, we'd love to see it in the chat or have you email us how you've connected those two pieces and why it's important to you. And then we'll make sure to read that out and give you recognition for your work and say thank you, because it's so inspirational. And what we want to do is be a megaphone for your work on the ground too. So, okay, next slide. Okay, it's questions time. So I know live, there's not that many of us, but in the recording, if you have questions, you can email them. But live, is there anyone who wants to share anything or any questions that people want to ask about these practices? I guess you could put it in the chat, or are they able to unmute, or are they just in the chat?
You can unmute, I believe, if questions
Okay,
or comments
or highlights.
or highlights.
Oh yeah, so in the chat, Bailey has shared that the Dairy Council of California did a town hall about the USDA Farmers to Families Food Boxes program, where they highlighted Riverside Unified and the work they're doing. And I know I shared that in our CDFA Farm to School newsletter too. And there's a link to it. It's just so impactful. And it's been a real challenge, I know, to navigate the shifting relief packages that you don't know, like, did that just get released? Did it just get announced? Is that real or is that just an idea? It's really hard to figure it all out. So I know No Kid Hungry has strategies on that too, as well as the Dairy Council hosted this webinar. So thank you. Okay, well, I'll jump into the chat if anybody else has stuff there. We can go to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to talk about barriers to implementation and how we can support you in this work. Because if you're somebody who was like me, I used to run a school garden and culinary program. I would have loved to act as a school nutrition hub, but I didn't have time for that. I was growing the garden and developing the curriculum and doing fundraising just to have a job. So how do you actually implement these strategies? So we need to talk about building capacity, finding funding or navigating these shifting regulations and guidelines, and then connecting with a resilient food supply. We've seen gaps in the food system, like I said, sometimes with the food surpluses shifting from grocery store shelves to pantry shelves. It's been a challenge to find a resilient food supply is one of the issues as well. So if there are other barriers, let us know. But we have prepared some resources to share with you about each of these different challenges. Okay, next slide. So some of these resources include CDFA, which I'll talk about, our new Farm to School grant, No Kid Hungry, the California Department of Education. And then if you have, I guess the Dairy Council should be on there too, of course, because Allison will share, so the Dairy Council. But then if you have other places where you've been getting good information, please put that in the chat and we can include those in future iterations of this slide deck. I think it'll be really important for us to keep this updated as things constantly change and evolve. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is CDFA and our brand new Farm to School Incubator Grant Program. So at CDFA, we run the California Farm to School Network. We just got funding for it in July, so it's just getting started. If you're interested, reach out. There's still room for us to, build relationships into it. But what I really want to share is our California Farm to School Incubator Grant Program. This program just got posted online on Friday afternoon last week. So it's real fresh and it's open right now for a public comment period. So I'm going to give a quick overview and then whether it's today or the end of next week, if you're able to send in any notes or feedback that you have about our California Farm to School Incubator Grant Program, RFA, you can go to the link there and check it out and send in comments. So what we have developed now is 2 funding tracks. The timeline on this is that the application would go live in December, it would close in February, and then we would be awarding grants in March with funding going out in June. So it's a pretty quick turnaround here. It would be ready for you by the start of the next school year if you're a late start district. But there's 2 funding. First one is Farm to School. And this is about bridging the gap between nutrition education, bridging the gap between the classroom and the cafeteria. Oftentimes we see school nutrition teams doing as much as they can to provide nutrition ed and other food related programming, but from within their silo of school nutrition. And other times we see school garden programs that are operating at great capacity, doing a ton of stuff around science and next generation standards or whatever it is. And then they don't have a relationship with the nutrition department. The reason for that is, of course, capacity, time to collaborate. So this Farm to School Innovation Grant gives awards $20,000 to $500,000 for schools to procure local foods and to integrate educational activities alongside the school nutrition opportunities. So it's based on a funding formula for your school district. So you can see that funding formula on the RFA if you click the link. The smaller side is 20 grand, the larger side is 500,000. We're hoping to award between 30 and 50 of those grants statewide. So, like I said, it's still under development, so please leave public comments there. But this is funding where if you've had to drop off your nutrition ed programs, or you're trying to transition them digitally, but are having a hard time coordinating, this is funding to allow you to do that coordination and to start sourcing some local products as well. So that's our farm to school innovation track. The second track is $10,000 to $250,000, and this is for regional farm to school partnerships. And what we're really hoping to do here is to scale up existing farm to school activities. So let's say you've been buying from a small producer. That small producer sells to 5 or 6 local school districts. They're selling lettuce greens, but they want to start selling also cherry tomatoes, other salad bar items, or you haven't had the opportunity to recreate your salad bar in the grab and go meals. This would be an opportunity for you to rebuild those partnerships based on what you need. So if your farmer just needs refrigeration, they can apply for $10,000 for a new fridge for the farm. But if you need a truck and a farm and somebody to coordinate, then you can apply for the larger award amount. So we're really hoping to get feedback on those tracks. The second one is really you telling us, here is the pieces of the food system that we have. Here are the pieces that we need, and here's how we're going to put them together. Here are our partners, and then you submit it. We tried to keep it as simple as possible. So please check out both of those programs, and you can find them at the link in this presentation. You can also email me with any questions. And then on the next slide, I have just a couple talking points on why local food is important, even though it feels like it might be extra effort during this time. It's because local food is resilient and engaging. During the COVID-19, when the food system was disrupted, when things were initially shut down, um, what happened was the districts that already had relationships with their farmers could continue finding those products and sourcing them. But the school districts that were sometimes just going through a larger distribution network, which is totally something that has to happen, sometimes those products were harder to find. So a local food system where you know your farmer, or you know your grower, or where the production and distribution is happening, you're able to continue accessing those even in crisis because it's only a phone call away, right? So it's much more resilient that way. The other piece is that it's engaging. Farm to school and local products can help get people excited about the meals that you're giving out, because part of this formula we know is increasing participation. So local meals and promoting local foods can help you increase participation. So I have an infographic here where Natomas Unified, who's going to get a lot of love in this PowerPoint deck, but they buy directly from 4 local farms, and that's how they were able to continue serving those fresh greens, I know, from their salads. And utilizing local produce also from the USDA ensured that they were getting resilient local products that were fresh and delicious. So I just wanted to shout those things out and showcase why, even though local food might not seem like a priority for you, it still might fit into your work and your work as a school nutrition hub. So you can go to the next slide, Jerry, and I believe I'm going to pass it now to Kathy from No Kid Hungry. So thank you guys for listening to me talk so much today. And thank you, Kathy, for sharing this info on No Kid Hungry.
Certainly. Thank you, Nick. And thanks to everyone who is participating in this webinar live and who may be viewing it later unrecorded, for all the work that you are doing with feeding our kids, particularly during this pandemic. It's real heroes work. The No Kid Hungry campaign is committed to ending child hunger in the United States, which is no small mission, but we think the best way to do that is to address any barrier, address any challenges, remove any barriers that children have in accessing child nutrition programs, and particularly school meals. So we have been able to work with hundreds of districts around California and tens of thousands of districts around the nation in providing funding through grants, technical assistance, including marketing and communication support, in order for schools to become nutrition hubs for communities. Now, this has been something that we've been doing for years, but it certainly, as we have already talked about today, really the pandemic and the economic crisis exacerbated that need and really showed us where there was a lot of inequities in our communities and a lot of food insecurity. So I think as we're talking about nutrition hubs for schools, it is creating those nutrition hubs in the communities now, where a lot of this is being, as we've talked about, drive-through and pickup. But I think we all recognize that that need isn't going to go away after we get a vaccine or after the pandemic ends. There's still going to be an economic crisis that will be lingering. Or maybe we didn't think that there was a lot of food insecurity or economic struggle among families in our communities, but now we know that there is. And so the nutrition hubs can be something where the school can really be seen as a safe place where families know they can get healthy, nutritious food. And in order to do that, not only is it important to expand these programs and maximize all the school nutrition programs that you have at your disposal, but you got to make sure people know about them. And so if you go to our best practices website there, you can get resources on starting programs, on expanding your supper program, and you may say, well, I don't have time to figure out how to expand that program or to make sure that there's enrichment activities being offered. We have all that together on our website with links and resources that you can include to have your meet that enrichment requirement. If you have other needs for equipment, you can email us at nokidhungryca@strength.org, and we can put you in touch with one of our program managers. Our grants are invitation only, but we can begin that conversation with you. I think the other thing that's really important for best practices as we are doing a lot of this distribution on site is I know many districts are offering those bulk meal boxes for families. And families may be getting that box of food, and of course they're very appreciative of it, but some of them may be looking at it and go, okay, now what do I do with this? So we were able to take our Cooking Matters program and take some of their resources that they have to help families shop, prepare, and serve healthy meals to their families, and develop some frameworks for recipes and some recipes that use common ingredients found in these meal boxes. And so I think, again, a lot of those are things that you may know are needed in your community or in your schools, but just don't have that capacity to develop, but we have all that ready to go. And so hopefully that makes it easier for you. And if there are resources you could use, but you don't see there, we're very open to hearing about that and seeing what we can do to develop those for you. Next slide, please. So we're all committed to making sure our children are getting healthy meals every day. And I know your bosses are too, but some of our bosses are, so show me the money, right? So we have a terrific video, and I know that there are folks on this call now, on this webinar, who have created school nutrition hubs. And it's been a real financial boon to their programs as well, because what you're doing is maximizing those programs, increasing participation, and maximizing your reimbursements. Again, we know that these financial difficulties for communities and for schools are going to continue for a while. Some of your nutrition departments' budgets are operating in the red. And so being able to maximize those reimbursements and really get a fiscally sound program running is going to be really important in the forthcoming years. So there's a video here for you to watch at your leisure and really see how you can help create some buy-in from the leadership in your district and engage other stakeholders. And I think that's all the slides I have for No Kid Hungry. So I will toss it back to Nick.
Thank
Yeah, next
you.
slide, please.
Oh yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's going to Jackie. So there we go.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name's Jackie Richardson. I'm one of the newer team members at the California Department of Education and wanted to highlight a couple of resources that we have readily available for you. If you are interested in doing some additional exploratory research on how to um, develop food pantries at your school site, I want to draw your attention to our webpage. We know that food pantries are a great way to serve the community. Some of the tips and tricks that have been provided already are specific to the child nutrition programs, and we know that we want to provide opportunities to feed the families while we're there. So the Food Pantries in Schools webpage offers operating tips like types of programs, partnerships, sources for food, food distribution, and recommendations for nutrition and wellness promotion while you are operating a school food pantry. There's also information on the policy and guidance. So some really important things regarding the donation of food, food safety, and any sort of privacy for any information that you may be collecting as a part of your food pantry. There's resources, some examples of California school food pantries, discussion on food waste and food recovery, and links to additional resources as well, like toolkits and online trainings that could be useful for you as you're in your early stages of considering a food pantry on your school site. In addition to some of the best practices that Nick showcased a little bit earlier, the California Department of Education hosts Tuesdays at 2 webinars. So as you might imagine, these are on Tuesdays and they're at 2 o'clock. We try to make it as easy as possible and memorable. This is our webpage that provides information on our next upcoming Tuesday at 2 webinar. These are meant to provide updates on monthly state guidance. As Nick said, there's been over 70 webinars, plus questions and answers and additional federal guidance that's been rolling out pretty regularly since the summer. We're real hopeful that that's going to slow down, but it's also important to be available to provide any guidance. Department staff are available for questions and answers to school food service authorities for any specific case scenario questions that they may have in regards to the most recent update. But I think one of the biggest bonuses or benefits of these Tuesday at 2 webinars is that they're real heavy in peer sharing. So for each webinar, the Department of Ed hosts a panel, typically 3 presenters, each representing a small, a medium, and a large school district. So hopefully we get broad representation and our listeners can see themselves and believe that they can make some of these changes and learn from their peers. So there's best practices in adapting meal service for COVID. So things that like were shared earlier, bagging and distributing in bulk, doing multiple meal distribution for multiple programs at a single time, the use of bus delivery. I think our last one in Northern California, Redding School District shared that they're using school vending machines for contactless delivery as well. So there's a lot of really great ideas, practical tips, and it builds a peer community of support. And these are recorded. So we do have an inventory of these town halls available through YouTube. CDE Tuesdays at 2, a quick search, I'll pop that up for you. And if you're looking for inspiration and opportunities to connect with other school food service authorities, or if you have questions, we encourage you to participate in these Tuesday at 2 webinars. So we look forward to seeing you, and I'm going to pass it to Allison now, who's going to give an overview of some nutrition education that you can use to support any sort of food access or food distribution programs you have.
Great, thanks so much, Jackie. Yeah, so I just wanted to take a moment to speak about nutrition education as part of school nutrition hub support. And what I'll be doing is using our Let's Eat Healthy movement as an example. But as we know, the collaborative includes many partners who are resource providers and technical advisors for nutrition education. We'll have an opportunity to share those in the chat and in our conversation coming up next. We define nutrition education, and we know that nutrition education is a variety of learning experiences designed to empower healthy eating habits. And it encompasses a wide range of topics from healthy eating patterns to the food system, includes all aspects of nutrition, such as the impact of food on the body and health, food identification and preparation, of food literacy, and advocacy for access to healthy food, which is part of what we're discussing today with the schools as nutrition hubs topic. Nutrition education, when supported by policy systems and environmental interventions, really serves as a strong catalyst to elevate health. So through shared values, the Let's Eat Healthy movement brings together educators, health professionals, change makers, and community leaders to elevate the health of children and families through the pursuit of lifelong healthy eating habits. The Let's Eat Healthy movement is an activation of the cause of Dairy Council, which is what I just described. We know that education happens in a variety of settings in the school environment and in the surrounding communities, and evidence shows that implementing multiple changes at various levels of the social ecological model is effective in improving healthy eating behaviors. And some of the resources which all of our resources are free, as you all know, and we would like to share with those who are listening now and with those on the recording, that all that we offer is free. And some examples of these resources that are offered through Dairy Council of California through the Let's Eat Healthy movement to support schools as nutrition hubs include our evidence-based curricula, short interactive handouts, virtual experiences like our mobile dairy classroom virtual field trips, and online learning and technical advising. And these resources can really serve, Kathy mentioned the importance of enrichment activities and how schools are using enrichment activities in a place is really present for nutrition education when we're looking at nutrition programs and including interactive experiences that we can provide as part of the school meal service. As always, through the Let's Eat Healthy movement and in general, and through the collaborative, we welcome the opportunity to collaborate, co-create, and implement quality nutrition education to demonstrate collective impact here. So for additional information about Let's Eat Healthy movement and additional information about the resources that we offer to support schools and school meal programs, you can reach out to us on our website at healthyeating.org, and my contact information will be on an upcoming slide, and I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. Okay, next slide, please, Jerry. Okay, so let's go ahead and unmute ourselves, and if there are any other funding resources that we want to share or any nutrition education resources that we want to share for the benefit of those on the line right now, as well as in the recording in the future, we can acknowledge some of these now. I see that Kathy, thank you, Kathy, added some information to the chat box. So yes, she mentions that CalFresh outreach is happening at school sites, and also has added a link to No Kid Hungry School Meals Marketing Toolkit. That's great.
Yeah,
And
I have a lot of stuff you can plug and play.
That's fantastic. And what we'll do is, as part of the follow-up for this recording, we can make sure that these links get added to the email that goes out to our listserv. Any other resources to share at this time? Okay, so as I mentioned, we can always follow up with other information. Oh, I'm seeing some rolling in. Information from Dr. Lewis. Thank you. He's acknowledging that he's used No Kid Hungry marketing tools and kits. And Crystal Young from CDE has added a link, so we'll make sure that gets out as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Allison, I wanted to just share with everyone that the CDE is continuing to provide funding for breakfast expansion, equipment grants, and we also have a teen nutrition grant rolling out this school year in the spring to really focus on providing professional learning opportunities for school nutrition staff, as well as to improve the quality of meals and support our local farmers by using local ingredients. So we used to say, you know, it's not nutrition unless it's eaten. And so we want to not just put food out there, but put food out there that's appealing to the community and reflects the regions and the culture that are across California. So it's a really exciting grant that provides opportunities for student engagement and community engagement, as well as nutrition education. And you can find out more about all of our grants on the CDE funding website that I've added to the chat box. So thank you for that opportunity, Allison.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Okay. So next slide, Jerry, please. Thank you. So we just wanted to take a pause. We've been sharing a lot of information, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions about any of the content that was covered so far. I know we covered a lot of information, lots of great info that everybody's been sharing. Okay, so hearing none at this time, we've done a great job of getting all the information out there clearly. So good job, team. Next slide. All right. And for more information, as I mentioned, to sign up for our newsletter for our collaborative, feel free to visit our website, healthyeating.org/CA School Wellness. In addition to that, you could follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and on Instagram. And as always, welcome any input, any information, any questions. We're here to support you, to support our school wellness partners throughout California in implementing and activating their school wellness programs. And again, thanks for everybody who's attended, and thanks for the team for putting this webinar together. It was a great, great teamwork effort. So thanks again so much. Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll sign off for today.